right, I'll jump in. I had two ideas I was working on, and I spent like probably 20 minutes working on the first one before I actually decided to Google and find out that it was already a movie. So like, I was just reading basically the story of Bernie Madoff. That I was like, this is very interesting. You know, all I know is like he had a Ponzi scheme. So the way in, like I keep saying that because like the podcast I listen to, they say that's the way into the story. I don't even know what that means, but but the way into it for me was like, so that kid, that guy that plays Landry from Friday Night Lights.
Yes.
I was thinking like
Texas Forever.
What if he was a like top-notch corporate spy? So it's in like basically it's set in the world of corporate espionage, and his job is to go in for like big tech companies and spy on other tech companies. So he has a company that offers like services, one of them being spying and one of them being like just testing if your security is good, because that's a thing people do. They'll just be like, nobody knows we're doing this, but we're hacking our own company to see, you know. So he's like the main character, and he gets invited into the world of basically like Bernie Madoff's company. And he finds out very quickly that this is a massive like 30-year Ponzi scheme. So I started going down the rabbit hole, and then I was like, ooh, maybe I should just do the story of Bernie Madoff. And like I started writing down all these notes, and I was like, oh, this is like Robert De Niro like made this movie. So it's called, I forget what it's called.
Really?
I didn't watch it.
Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah.
Weekend at Bernie Madoff. I think it's just called Madoff. Wasn't it?
It's
like a
called
HBO
The
movie?
Wizard of Lies.
Yeah.
Never even heard of it.
So, yeah, I didn't watch it, but I just think that's like an awesome character. He like sort of like invented the NASDAQ or something. Like he had something to do with, you know, at one point his company was doing like 9% of the trading on Wall Street, because I think he was early on in like automated trading or something like that. You know, like he built like computer systems that would just like move a shitload of money. So I'm just gonna write corporate espionage. It's not much. It's just I like that world, and maybe this is like 5 years down the line, I'll figure out what it actually is.
Put that as a note.
Yeah,
5 year plan.
It's a 5.5-year plan. 5 years from now,
Siri, remind me in 5 years. Hey Siri, remind
I'll
Brendan in 5 years.
ask that guy Landry from Friday Night Lights.
If he wants to be in a
If
movie
he has
about
any good ideas about a Bernie Madoff movie. So that was the first one. So the second one was I only have two.
yeah, that's fine.
Again, I know we want to do something. We talked about this one a while ago. We want to do something based on Edgar Allan Poe. So this one, I got this email like from Stage 32, one of those screenwriting communities that says like it was like Netflix is looking for adventure family movies.
Yes.
So we just watched Hocus Pocus with the kids for the first time. They like loved it. You know, they're singing "I Put a Spell on You" and stuff. Benson loves Jack Skellington too. So like, but that's, you know, there's Frankenweenie, there's those two, but before you reach kind of like the horror level, there's not like an insane amount of family Halloween kind of like classics. I don't know. I'm not saying this movie would be a classic, but I was like, that's where I want to write for family adventure Halloween. So the basic idea would be it would be called The Telltale Heart. I think The Telltale Heart story by Edgar Allan Poe was like something like somebody buried a heart in, like someone was murdered and they there was a killer
under the floorboards.
Right, buried him
And
under the
police
floorboards.
end up coming, and then he has to like talk to them, and then he hears the beating of like the heart, and then like freaks him out.
So basically, again, I don't know if this is exactly how we would attack it, but it's like I was just trying to come up with a modern story around The Telltale Heart. So, there's this girl named Abilene who lives in modern day Baltimore. Her parents like just get a divorce, so she's moving into this new house with her mom, and she has a best friend named Carlos. There's like a little bit of setup at school. You see, I don't even know what it is. They just need to do something. Something they have to do at school. It's very vague. And Aveline hears, one evening hears this thumping in the floor, and she pulls the floorboards up and she finds this box with a key. And it has, so it's a little bit like National Treasury.
Okay.
Like
I
there's like
that.
a lot of stuff to do. So she decodes this cipher. I should add, she's a writer. She wants to be a writer. And I think she's like 6th or 7th grade, basically. So she brings the box to where Edgar Allan Poe is buried, and she follows the instructions. Like there's this like magical key thing or something in his grave or whatever, and basically some magicry happens, and she resurrects Edgar Allan Poe, who I was thinking is like Walter Goggins.
Okay.
And he's like immediately like really busy. Like he's like, what year is it? Okay, we've got to move quickly. And obviously her and Carlos are like, what is happening? So, I'll try to zoom through it a little bit more, but ultimately he finds he needs their help to find this book that is his life's work that nobody knew about, and it's called Poetta. So when they find the book, he basically explains to them, he's like, do you guys believe in alternate realities? And he says, well, let me show you. So basically it's kind of like Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So he brings them to this place called Poetta, which is modern day Baltimore, but it's like steampunk. And there's like where you would see Domino Sugar across the harbor is like this castle. And so it's basically set in the harbor, but it's this like it's Narnia basically, but like an Edgar Allan Poe kind of like dark Narnia. So what they come to realize sort of early on is Edgar Allan Poe needs to defeat the Queen of Poetta, who he wrote into existence. She's the Raven Queen. The Raven Queen. So you learn this backstory somewhere along the way. I'll butcher what it is, but it's basically like he wrote all of his pains and sorrows from his life, his mother, the love that he had that he lost, all of these things he wrote into this character, the Raven Queen. And he wrote this world into existence that he started going to in his mind, and eventually the world, he was like, because he was dark and stuff, like he was using old books and he was writing like incantations and magical stuff into his writings, and suddenly this world was real and the Raven Queen was real, and she started ruling over this land, and he would go there, and he was like, they fell in love with each other. And eventually she, her intentions became a little darker, and she was like, we're going to bring Poetta to the world. We should be your only reality. And so there was like this prophecy she made. And the prophecy was like, in 200 years, this is hocus pocus. Like in 200 years, the gate will open and I will unleash Poetta upon your world, and you can live forever. Then we can be together. So Poe is going to stop her. And that's why he set up he like buried his heart and all this stuff. So, we meet the Queen when they first get to Poetta, and Edgar Allan Poe turns, and he's basically like, thank you for getting me here. You guys are screwed now because I'm going to the castle. It's impenetrable. But he kind of gives them like some little breadcrumbs earlier. So they have to go on an adventure. I feel like I'm dragging this out a little bit, but
no.
So Poe goes to the castle. He disappears, but now Aveline and Carlos are stranded in Poetta. So they have to go through these trials, basically like Labyrinth. They have to go to the Cask of Amontillado pub, and they have to like defeat the bartender in some like word game. And their ultimate goal is to find the black cat, which I think is one of Poe's shorts that we had been reading. So they need to find their way to the black cat because the black cat holds the secret and the key to the back of the castle. Like basically the castle you can't get into. So they go through this series of trials that are all tied to different Poe short stories. They have to go through like this, fiery swamp, and they have to do, like kind of the standard like adventure fare. So they finally get to the castle and they're captured. And then I should have planted this earlier, but the book of Poetta is guarded at the Queen's right hand. Like it sits on a pedestal and it's in the thing. So their goal is to capture the book of Poetta and write a new future. That's what Poe tells her needs to happen. And Poe, again, this is a little bit earlier. I missed a bunch of plants, but because Poe is technically dead, he can't write the future. So he has to have Aibileen write for him. She becomes his scribe.
Okay.
So as she writes things for Poe, things will change in the world. Things will happen based on what she writes. So they get there, they're captured, and then Poe changes sides again and gives them the book. But whatever happens, basically it's too late, and the gates open, and the world is flooded with the creatures and stuff of Poetta. So they've basically like lost. So ultimately, I have kind of the rest of it jotted down in basic form, but it's like exactly as you'd expect it. I think maybe Poe gets like destroyed. They can't get his help anymore. She realizes sort of the power is in her, and she starts writing her own book, her own universe that's like also a sci-fi, but it's like her version, and it's like, you know, her and Carlos, maybe they have like robot suits or some shit. I don't know what it is, but like it's a sci-fi, you know, because he was like the father of modern sci-fi. As far as like I've read, like he was kind of the first science fiction writer, they say, or at least early. So she starts writing modern science fiction to fight the Queen. Ultimately, some large battle happens. She writes a new future. She defeats the Queen, and she figures out how to close the gates. And Poe comes back and basically is like, you know, they defeat the Queen, and when they strip away the Queen's power or whatever, she's just like a lady, you know, she's like and Poe is like, this is the love of my life. Thank you for what you've done. I'm going to stay here now. I live in Poetta, and we're going to close these gates. But, you know, just understand that you have this power and wield it like responsibly, because whatever future you write ultimately can be a reality. And that's pretty much it. And so they like go back to school, and whatever that thing is that I didn't figure out in the beginning, they like write in the newspaper. They like write a column or something, and they like solve that problem. I don't know what it is,
okay.
But that's kind of it.
I really like. I'm sorry.
No, that's it.
I really like the setting to that, like a lot. Like I like the alternate universe, steampunk, Edgar Allan Poe. They find it. It's magical. The only thing that worries me is the third act. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
But it feels more like Wrinkle in Time-esque, where it might not hit the mark if done too, like, you have the power in you. And, like, the whole time you were saying that, now you can just change everything magically.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow,
exactly,
that's so not relatable.
Why didn't you just tell me that in the beginning?
And it's, like, so not relatable.
That's
And that's why those movies flop, because it's like, hey, my kid watched this. It really didn't do anything for any of us. Like, that's for me. I'm like, I love everything. I was like, okay, yeah, I can envision it. I'm like, I love even Walter Goggins as him. Oh, that's great. They're going through this really cool universe that's not been done.
Dark Crystal, I think, too, is kind of the vibe. Like,
all
it'd be
of that
very
stuff.
Jim Henson-y.
Yeah, I love that. That's like, and you're right, that is a void that hasn't been filled at all. And I'm like, that would be great. I think the problem for me is like all of that is well and good, but that third act right now for me is the third act for me is a little too, like I said, like Wrinkle in Time type movie, where I'm like, ooh, that could fall flat pretty quickly, and everyone's gonna go, okay, come on, it wasn't even like you didn't try kind of thing.
It can't just be write your way out of it.
Yeah, it can't. It should be. She tries to, and it doesn't work.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, that ain't how it works. And you're like, oh, okay, oh crap, what's really gonna be the ending? This is gonna be interesting. Because I think a lot of movies, just use that as a scapegoat, kind of.
It's a crutch. It's too easy. What would be? I guess the question I would have is like, what would be a great ending? Because like, I think Hocus Pocus has the perfect ending. It's like this beautiful false victory that they drag out for a while. It makes you, as a kid, you feel like you're in the denouement. You're like, they did it, and it's not. I guess it's like pretty easy to lock them up and they burn them, you know, and you're like, all right. Like, I remember the first time I watched that, I'm like, I was pretty satisfied with that ending. I was like, okay, they won. he gets the girl. They're like, and I'm like, oh, but the book's still alive. And oh shit, they're back. And now it's like an epic battle again. You know, I feel like it needs that. It needs like maybe they close the gates, they totally win, and again, it's not how that works.
I think so.
Bigger false victory.
Bigger false victory. A better, like the crutch doesn't work, but there's something else. I feel like I don't know what. Obviously,
I mean, some kind of plant from the beginning.
Yeah, that's more realistic and
Yeah.
relatable. None of it's realistic. You know what's relatable? Guns. More relatable, I want to say, because a lot of these other ones use things that aren't relatable. I've noticed in kids' movies specifically that the third act is like, you have this crazy power, and it's an actual magical power, magical thing that's not relatable at all. And I'm like, why did they even use that? Because how kids are going to relate to that? Not only families, but kids.
I'll keep going back to it, but Hocus Pocus,
Yeah.
he had to sacrifice himself for his sister.
Yeah.
But it wasn't because that's how you win. It was because they just needed the time.
Yep.
You know, because there's a time clock on that one. And that might be a great thing to use. It's just like there's straight up a time clock. Like if like the gates of Poetta close at X on Halloween, you know, it's the same. It's fucking Hocus Pocus. I don't want to rip it off too much, but
you kind of came to this conclusion because of that, and there's a void in that genre and that specific story that is kind of classic, but hasn't been reskinned.
Yeah, so maybe we'll talk about the ending there. I kind of
I like the backdrop to it
all
a
right,
lot.
cool.
I like the characters so far, but I feel like the fun and games is really fun. Like I think all of those like
it's
little
a lot of set pieces.
I think it's cool.
It's an expensive as hell movie.
It's that's why it's a risk too.
Yeah, it'd be fun to write though. I think that like who cares? Not like we're gonna.
I picture it more like Coraline.
Yeah. I think definitely like almost the Tim Burton-esque like like that would be the pinnacle. If this was like a Tim Burton movie, that's how I would see it. You know, like just that kind of world, how everybody has.
Yeah, that's cool.
Cool.
All right.
I suck at endings. We need an ending.